President Trump now tells us China is to blame for the havoc that the coronavirus is wreaking across the world. He's paused funding to the World Health Organization because he says it colluded with China in keeping the facts hidden. To evaluate these claims, just keep in mind one tweet from the president. On January 24th, China has been working very hard to contain the coronavirus. The United States greatly appreciates their efforts and transparency. It will all work out well. In particular, on behalf of the American people, I want to thank President Xi. What did the world, including President Trump, know about the virus at that point? Well, one day earlier, on January 23rd, the World Health Organization warned all countries should be prepared for containment of the virus, including active surveillance, early detection, isolation, and case management, contact tracing and prevention of onward spread, unquote. By this point, stories about the virus were all over the news. China had announced that the virus was being transmitted between humans and had begun locking down parts of Hubei province. As for the U.S. government, on January 18th, a week earlier, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar had briefed Trump on the dangers of the virus, according to the Washington Post. By January 24th, there were 2 confirmed cases of the disease in the U.S., and on January 27th, the Centers for Disease Control issued a Level 3 warning to avoid non-essential travel to China. On January 29th, Trump tweeted, "Just received a briefing on the coronavirus in China from all our great agencies who are also working closely with China." That very day, one of Trump's most trusted aides, Peter Navarro, wrote a memo warning about a possible pandemic that could kill up to 500,000 Americans. Navarro noted that Chinese reports indicated that the virus was likely far more contagious than the flu, more like the bubonic plague or smallpox. The next day, January 30th, the WHO declared a global public health emergency. Just hours after that, this is what Trump said.
Now we're working very strongly with China on the coronavirus. We think it's going to have a very good ending for us.
So the question is, was Donald Trump telling the truth about China then, or is he telling the truth about it now? Let me be clear. With regard to COVID-19, China engaged in a cover-up, and the WHO did not push back enough, though both deny it. Local officials in Wuhan knew about the disease early but chose to minimize fears about it and to punish doctors who spoke out. Beijing, for its part, kept a tight lid on information, refused help from the CDC, and gave the WHO limited access to Wuhan. Some health experts say it is likely that China is still giving us unreliable data about the numbers of infected and dead. And China's repressive regime has always controlled and manipulated information to serve its larger interests. But none of that changes the fact that Donald Trump was well aware of the potential dangers of the virus by late January at minimum and by mid-February at the latest. He made a judgment that the virus would not be a big problem for America, that it would go away in April with warm weather. He apparently worried that taking any strong actions against it would spook the stock market. It is those misjudgments that have significantly worsened the COVID-19 crisis in America. Now, to deflect blame from himself, President Trump has decided to bash China. This compounds one bad policy with another. Whatever China's mistakes, missteps, and deceptions, the fastest way to defeat this pandemic would be to build a broad international alliance, to pool resources, share information, and coordinate actions. Right now, Washington is doing the opposite, restricting trade in key supplies, allegedly outbidding other countries for shipments of PPE, and acting without even consulting with its closest allies. China, meanwhile, has tried to scrub its own record by floating a conspiracy theory that the U.S. military created the outbreak in Wuhan. It has also tried to burnish its image by doing undeniably good things, like lending its expertise to countries around the world and sending supplies to hard-hit places such as Iran, Italy, Spain, and the United States. During the Cold War, when the United States and the Soviet Union were mortal rivals, they still cooperated on a campaign to vaccinate the world and eradicate smallpox. Now we are in the middle of a global pandemic, and the US and China, the world's two leading powers are trading insults and one-upping each other in a childish blame game that will not save one human life anywhere.